Ever wonder what pirates were really like? Prepare to have your mind blown with 101 jaw-dropping facts. From brutal punishments to creepy superstitions, hidden treasures, and shocking secrets, these pirates were way more than just legends. They were ruthless, cunning, and downright terrifying. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Watch now and uncover the real story. Pirates didn't wear eye patches just to look menacing. They were savvy enough to use them for light management. By covering one eye before heading below deck, they could flip the patch up and instantly have night vision. No squinting or awkward adjustments. Just instant darkness adaptation. Talk about multitasking. It's like having a pair of sunglasses that double as psychological warfare. Not only did they look fierce, but they also made practical sense. Pirates were way ahead of their time in both style and strategy. Walking the plank? Yeah, that's more Hollywood than history. Pirates were too busy with ships to raid and rum to drink to bother with such theatrics. The reality is, most victims were either stabbed, drowned in barrels, or tossed overboard like unwanted cargo. Planking was a rare event, reserved only for prisoners they wanted to humiliate. It was all about efficiency. Pirates didn't have time for drama, and that's what makes them way scarier than the exaggerated movie versions. Pirate crews weren't, made up of noble warriors. They were a chaotic mix of rejects, runaways, and those who had absolutely nothing to lose. From fired sailors to escaped prisoners, training happened on the job. Swing a cutlass without chopping off a limb, fire a pistol without blowing your hand to bits. It was all trial and error, with one key rule. Don't kill the captain in his sleep, because loyalty was a low bar to clear. A pirate crew's real power. Ruthlessness. Everything else came second. Pirates, surprisingly enough, had written codes. These weren't just suggestions. They were a set of rules that governed everything from loot division to how to handle disagreements. Step out of line, and you could end up marooned, flogged, or tossed overboard like yesterday's garbage. It wasn't all chaos and anarchy. There was a surprising amount of organization, like a criminal corporation, except with worse hygiene. Think democracy, with a healthy dose of violence, all held together by the threat of punishment. When it came to pirate dentistry, let's just say it wasn't exactly a luxury experience. No dentists, no anesthesia, just pirates using hammers, chisels, and some very questionable techniques. Got a bad tooth? Rip it out, probably while screaming into a leather strap. Missing teeth? Pirates didn't bother with dentures, they just swapped them for brass or iron. Full metal grills weren't a fashion statement. They were a survival strategy. A pirate grinning with jagged metal teeth was the kind of image that made people rethink their life choices. Pirates might have terrorized the seas, but they were just as terrified of them. They were convinced that every hat drop was a bad omen. A misfired anchor meant disaster, and ghost sightings were enough to send them into a panic, followed by more rum. It's not that they were soft. They just believed the oceans were full of angry spirits, vengeful drowned sailors, and sea monsters big enough to swallow ships. So, these hardened criminals would sail the seas, conquering everything in sight, while shaking in their boots at the same time. Mutiny. That was basically a normal Tuesday. If a captain messed up, bad food, poor raids, dumb decisions, the crew wouldn't hesitate to toss them overboard. Even Blackbeard faced crew problems. It wasn't dramatic, it was just business. One screw up, and you were out. No HR meetings, just bloody deck fights to determine if your leadership survived or if you'd end up swimming with the fishes. Treasure wasn't all gold and jewels. Pirates snatched whatever they could sell or drink before anyone had a chance to stop them. Salted meat, fresh water, spices, rum. Treasure hunts. More like grab everything and run than burying chests on secret islands. The idea of treasure maps is mostly a Hollywood fabrication. The real treasure was surviving another week without being hanged, shot, or dying of some horrific tropical disease. Buried treasure. More like spend it all before the next raid. Pirates didn't bother burying gold. They gambled it, drank it, or spent it on more ships. The whole buried treasure thing. It didn't happen often, and when it did, pirates usually forgot where they'd hidden it or died trying to find it again. The real treasure was making it through the week in one piece. Captaincy was a temporary gig, and if you messed up, you were voted out, quickly and often violently. Pirates didn't care about charisma, they cared about results. Screw up enough times, and you could find yourself at the bottom of the ocean. No golden parachutes here, just a harsh reminder that loyalty was based on performance, not sentiment. Pirates weren't just criminals, they were sadistic. Torturing prisoners wasn't just for information, it was entertainment. Keel hauling, burning coals, thumbscrews, you name it. They enjoyed the pain of their victims, probably because they had too much time on their hands and too little remorse. These weren't the lovable anti-heroes we see in movies. They were cold-blooded, bloodthirsty monsters with no morals. Life on a pirate ship. There was no privacy, no personal space, just overcrowded hammocks, sweat, rot, and poor decisions. Fresh air. You got it when the wind was kind, or when the ship was about to capsize. Many pirates would rather fight than sit around dealing with the miserable conditions. At least combat offered a chance to die quickly. Pirates didn't have the luxury of loyalty. They raided each other constantly. Crews attacked rival ships for loot, revenge, or territory. Trust? That was rare. And betrayal was just a smart business move. Pirates were all predators and prey in a brutal game of survival, where loyalty only lasted as long as the profits did. Women pirates weren't just the exception. They were the rule when it came to ruthlessness. Anne Bonny and Mary Red were just the beginning. Disguised as men, they fought, killed, and earned the kind of reputation that made people think twice. They weren't here to follow the rules. They were here to make their own. And in doing so, they carved out their own legendary space in a world that either wanted them dead or married. Pirates had a strange relationship with religion. Some of them carried Bibles and actually prayed for divine blessing before setting out to rob and kill. Others took a more mocking approach, using religion as a tool for manipulation and fear. Some ships had chaplains who performed services while actively breaking commandments. Religion, to a pirate, was whatever suited the moment: comfort, control, or leverage. Faith mixed with hypocrisy, and all of it was soaked in rum. Most pirates didn't meet their end in glorious battle, but rather from the boring stuff that made their lives miserable. Scurvy destroyed gums and teeth. Dysentery made long voyages a disgusting nightmare. Minor cuts quickly turned deadly due to infections. And that's not even counting the falls from rigging or the occasional accidental explosion. Pirates didn't live long, with most only making it to their 30s. Those who survived, often, ended up hiding under fake names or running from authorities, making their lives anything but adventurous. Pirate flags weren't just some skull and crossbones cliché, they were personalized symbols of fear. Red flags, for example, meant no mercy and total slaughter. Others displayed hourglasses, skeletons, weapons, or even the captain's face. Each flag had a story to tell and a message: surrender or die. The Jolly Roger was a masterstroke of psychological warfare. When pirates hoisted that flag, even the bravest sailors panicked before the first shot was fired. Rum was the drink of choice because fresh water spoiled quickly and being sober sounded awful. Pirates drank it straight, mixed, or used it as currency. Drunkenness was normal, fights were frequent, and hangovers permanent. Without rum, morale would have crashed faster than a sinking ship. It wasn't just a drink. Rum fueled the pirate lifestyle. If you couldn't hold your liquor, you didn't last long on a pirate ship. Pirates weren't the picture of honor you might think. They had codes, sure, but they were as flexible as a pirate's sense of morality. The pirate code outlined how loot was shared, how captains were respected, and how to deal with crewmates who stepped out of line. Break the code, and it was marooning, flogging, or a swift trip overboard. Leadership wasn't about charisma, it was about results. One bad decision and your time at the top was over. It was organized chaos, just enough to keep the crew from murdering each other before raiding someone else. Pirates performed surgery with whatever they had on hand: rusty knives, dirty saws, and any sharp object they could find. Amputations after battle were common, and anesthesia, not even a thought. Patients screamed into leather as their limbs were hacked off. Ship cooks doubled as surgeons because, hey, they were already experts at cutting meat. The survival rate was terrible. Gangrene meant death. But the real kicker? Those who survived became legends, feared not just for their ruthlessness, but for being too stubborn to die. Nothing says tough like surviving a leg
Pirates performed
amputation and
surgery
bragging
with
about it.
whatever they had
Pirate
on
currency?
hand.
Whatever they could grab. Spanish pieces of 8, English pounds, French livres, Dutch guilders, plus stolen jewels and spices. Basically, history's most chaotic banking system. Pirates ran like floating pawn shops, converting anything into cash. Some even melted silver into crude coins, and exchange rates, well, those were determined by sword size, inflation, that kicked in every time a treasure ship was found. Economists would have had a meltdown trying to track these finances. Pirates? They just grabbed, spent, and moved on to the next loot-filled adventure. Remote islands became pirate havens, fortified hideouts with no pesky authorities around to bother them. Tortuga, Nassau, and Madagascar turned into lawless vacation resorts where violence was the only currency. Fresh water, ship repairs, and endless loot were the perks. Pirates would beach their ships, divide the loot, gamble away their fortunes, and plan their next raid in the sun. It was like spring break for murderers. Except hangovers came with stab wounds, and souvenirs were stolen goods. Getting caught by the law wasn't a quiet affair for pirates. It was a public spectacle. Pirate trials were more like theatrical performances, with the outcomes already decided. Judges delivered justice speeches while the crowd gathered for hangings like they were watching a dinner theatre show. Pirates often made final speeches, mocking their captors or recruiting new crew members. Death was a given, but at least they went out in style, making the public execution both a warning and entertainment for bloodthirsty crowds. Pirates with missing limbs didn't settle for prosthetics. They made their disabilities terrifying. Peg legs? Real and used for walking, but also made climbing rigging a nightmare. Hook hands? Not just movie props. These were real tools for gripping ropes, holding weapons, and scaring enemies. Some pirates added blades or spikes to their prosthetics, turning missing limbs into weapons of intimidation. If you lost a body part, you either adapted or died. The survivors? They became legends, too tough for missing limbs to slow them down. Navigation for pirates was a mix of guesswork, stolen maps, and prayers to gods who probably weren't listening. Pirates used stolen compasses and dead reckoning, which was more dead than accurate. They followed coastlines, tracked stars, and relied on kidnapped sailors to know local waters. Getting lost was a regular occurrence, finding land was a miracle, and accurate navigation was pure luck. Sometimes pirates ended up hundreds of miles off course, stumbling into accidental discoveries, unplanned raids, or straight into enemy territory. Food on pirate ships wasn't exactly a gourmet experience. It rotated between disgusting, inedible, and probably poisonous. Salt pork doubled as shoe leather. Hardtack biscuits were full of weevils, and fish was whatever they managed to catch without poisoning themselves. Fresh water turned green and slimy after weeks, making rum the only safe drink. Scurvy was basically guaranteed without fresh fruit or vegetables. Stealing food during raids often mattered more than stealing gold because, at least with food, you could survive until the next raid. Ship cooks? They were more like magicians, somehow turning rotten ingredients into something just slightly less rotten. Pirate weapons were like a ticking time bomb. Salt water rusted everything, and with no proper maintenance, things went bad quickly. Cutlasses rusted, pistols misfired, and cannons exploded at the most inconvenient moments. Pirates spent hours cleaning guns with whatever oil they could find, sharpening blades on rough stones, and praying their weapons wouldn't fail in the middle of battle. Keeping gunpowder dry in constantly wet conditions. Impossible. Many pirates died because their weapons malfunctioned at the worst time, proving that even the toughest criminals needed reliable gear. Pirates had a flag system more complicated than most modern corporations. Each color meant something different. Red for no mercy, black for regular piracy, and white for let's talk. Hand signals coordinated attacks, so they didn't have to shout and give away their position. Pirates even used coded messages to plan raids, and gossip spread faster than their ships could sail. Taverns, brothels, and markets were their version of early social media, with loose tongues sharing intel on which ships were carrying the best loot. No cat videos, just pirate intel. Royal pardons were like government-sponsored career changes for pirates. Some pirates used them to become privateers with official permission to attack enemy ships. Others saw pardons as temporary crime vacations, only to return to piracy when civilian life got boring. The smart ones collected multiple pardons from different countries, playing one government against the other, A few actually retired, but most pirates found civilian life way too dull after years of living dangerously. Let's be honest, after solving problems with cutlasses and cannons, office work just doesn't seem that exciting. Pirates didn't always sail the high seas on grand ships. Some of them used small, fast, and incredibly maneuverable boats known as jolly boats. They weren't interested in fancy battleships. These smaller vessels were built for quick raids, stealth, and speed. Pirates knew the real trick was in hit-and-run tactics, not long, drawn-out fights. So, while they might have looked like they were sailing with the big guns, in reality, they preferred to attack fast and get away before anyone could react. It's like the original hit-and-run strategy, just with more swords and fewer traffic laws. While you're picturing pirates with parrots on their shoulders, the truth is, they also had some pretty strange pets. It wasn't just parrots. Many pirates kept monkeys, cats, and even dogs on board their ships. Why? To keep the rats at bay. You see, the rats were a major problem on pirate ships, so the pets were recruited as natural pest control. Pirates may have been ruthless criminals, but they knew how to manage their ecosystem. Who knew pirates were such eco-friendly pest managers? Pirates didn't just steal gold and silver. They also went after something a little more unexpected: perfume. During the 17th century, perfume was incredibly expensive, and pirates had no qualms about stealing it. While most people think pirates were only after treasure, they were also targeting the luxury goods that could be resold for a hefty price. So, next time you think of a pirate, picture them with a chest of stolen gold, silver, and a few bottles of high-end French perfume. Nothing says ruthless like a pirate who smells like lavender and vanilla. Pirates didn't just maroon people on deserted islands, they made it an art form. Marooning wasn't just about getting rid of a troublemaker, it was a form of brutal psychological torture. Some pirates were left on desolate, uninhabited islands with nothing but a small amount of food and water. If you were lucky, you got a musket and a knife, but most of the time, it was just you and the wilderness. A marooned pirate had only two options: survive or die alone. And don't forget, those islands were filled with nothing but wild animals and whatever food you could forage. Your only companions were hunger and your own despair. Pirates didn't just sail aimlessly, they used a secret, often misunderstood tool for navigation: the logline. This simple device, made of rope and a weight, was used to measure a ship's speed. By tossing the weight into the water and counting the knots on the rope as it unraveled, pirates could gauge how fast they were going. It wasn't the most high-tech way to measure speed, but it worked. Pirates were clever enough to use whatever was available, even if it meant looking like they were doing a poor man's version of NASCAR on the open water. Pirates weren't just a menace to merchant ships. They also loved a good chase. Many pirates were actually former naval officers who knew how to fight. But they didn't always use conventional tactics. Instead, they would often hide their ships behind islands or use fog banks to ambush unsuspecting vessels. Their goal wasn't to get into a fight, they wanted to surprise and scare their victims into surrendering quickly. It was less about fight to the death and more about a game of catch me if you can. The perfect pirate raid didn't involve cannons. It involved getting the other ship to surrender without firing a single shot. Pirates were famously terrible at keeping records, unless it was for a bounty. One pirate, William Kidd, was known for keeping meticulous logs during his expeditions. His ship's log was practically a treasure map for historians, but his records weren't for business. They were for covering his backside when it came to looting. Kidd even went so far as to write down all the ships he legally attacked under his commission. The problem? His logs ended up backfiring when they were used as evidence against him during his trial. So, in the world of pirates, keeping a receipt could get you hanged. Many pirate ships didn't have captains the way we think. They had quartermasters. The quartermaster was the pirate crew's second in command, and their job wasn't just to help the captain. They were the ones who maintained order, enforced the pirate code, and had the power to challenge the captain if things went awry. In fact, the quartermaster had almost as much authority as the captain. So if your captain was too reckless or greedy, the quartermaster might just toss them overboard. Think of them as the pirate world's version of a COO, but with more rum and less HR. Pirates weren't all about stealing, they were also expert negotiators. If they didn't feel like fighting, they'd simply offer a deal. If a merchant ship surrendered without a fight, pirates might let them go with their lives in exchange for a small fee. This ransom system was common, especially for pirates like Bartholomew Roberts, who preferred the easy profit over risking injury. Why fight when you could just talk your way into a free bounty? In fact, pirates often threatened more than they fought. Knowing the fear alone could get them what they wanted without shedding a drop of blood. Despite their rough reputation, pirates were big fans of drinking games. Rum wasn't the only thing on the menu. Pirates loved playing dice games and card games when they weren't raiding ships or fighting over treasure. Gambling was a huge part of pirate culture, and it wasn't just for fun. Many pirates would bet their share of the loot in high-stakes games, with the winner taking home a massive prize. It's not just pirates and rum, it's pirates, rum, and a hell of a lot of gambling. When you live a life where death is only a bad decision away, you're going to take risks. And sometimes that means risking your loot for the thrill of a good roll of the dice. And when they did get on a ship, they didn't just steal anything that sparkled. Pirates had a pretty detailed shopping list for their loot, and it wasn't all about gold. Perfume, silk, and luxury fabrics were high on their list, and for good reason. These were items that could be easily traded or sold for a massive profit. Picture a pirate's haul, a chest full of gold, silver, and a few bottles of rare French perfume. Suddenly, they're not just thieves, they're savvy businessmen. Who knew a pirate's wardrobe could be worth more than their weaponry? But pirates weren't only about flashy goods. They also knew the real treasure was in practical tools. That's where the sextant came in, a navigation tool that helped them chart their course by measuring the angles between the horizon and the stars. Unlike the treasure maps we romanticize, pirates didn't have perfect charts to follow. They had to rely on instinct, luck, and old-school navigation. The sextant was their GPS, though a little less precise. But in pirate terms, that wasn't a setback. It was an opportunity for adventure, or even better, a chance to get lost and find new loot along the way. Speaking of getting lost, pirates were also incredibly skilled at improvising when things didn't go to plan. With their ships constantly battered by storms and wear, pirates knew their vessels would need repairs, and quickly. Grappling hooks, for example, weren't just for boarding other ships. They became useful tools for stealing parts from damaged vessels, or even swinging onto enemy ships like a scene straight out of an action movie. Pirates didn't wait for perfect conditions to make a plan. They took whatever was at hand and turned it into an advantage. When you're a pirate, you don't wait for the storm to pass. You sail through it. But let's not forget that being on a pirate ship wasn't all glamorous sword fights and treasure hunts. Life on board could get brutal, especially when a crewmate broke the code. If someone stepped out of line, punishment was swift and public. Flogging, marooning, or worse, getting thrown overboard were the usual consequences. In fact, punishment was often the glue that held the crew together, because without strict rules, even pirates knew they'd turn on each other. The most feared pirate captains, like Charles Vane, ruled with an iron fist until they pushed their crew too far. Ironically, even Vane, with all his brutality, was eventually voted out. His own crew had enough of his violent leadership, and in the pirate world, if you can't manage your crew, you're out. It's all about maintaining control, whether you're wielding a sword or enforcing a pirate code. Pirates weren't just about stealing treasure. They were professional thieves with a system. Loot was divided based on rank, and everyone had a say in how things were done. A pirate's share was earned, not just taken. And let's be real, if a pirate captain didn't perform, they were replaced quicker than you could say, walk the plank. Some might call it leadership, others might call it mutiny. But in the pirate world, it was all about keeping the loot flowing, fail the crew, and you were out faster than you could load a cannon. But let's not sugarcoat it. Life as a pirate wasn't all rum and treasure. Pirates were basically walking disease factories. Scourges like scurvy, dysentery, and various infections were the true killers, not rival ships. Scurvy in particular would rot your gums and teeth, making even the toughest pirate's smile look like a nightmare. So, when pirates raided ships, they didn't just take treasure. They'd also grab whatever could fight off scurvy. Fresh fruit, vegetables, and anything green. Pirates weren't just ruthless criminals, they were also survivalists. For pirates, it wasn't always about how you fought, it was about where. That's why pirates were so fond of ambush tactics. They loved hiding behind islands, using fog banks or coastlines to conceal their ships. The element of surprise was their greatest weapon. You wouldn't see a pirate coming until it was too late. By the time you saw the pirate ship, they'd already raided your vessel and left you wondering where your valuables had gone. It's the sneaky thief tactic, just way more dramatic. A pirate's reputation was as important as their sword. Blackbeard, for example, was known to never engage in battle without making sure his enemies were already terrified. He'd tie slow-burning fuses into his beard and light them, creating a terrifying, smoke-filled image. Imagine fighting a man who looks like he just walked out of your worst nightmare. The idea was simple: scare them into surrendering before even raising a sword. So next time you think about Blackbeard, remember, he didn't just use fear, he smelled like fear. Pirates weren't just concerned about raiding, they were deeply invested in their image. It wasn't uncommon for pirates to sport wild outfits, complete with flamboyant hats, boots, and of course, eye patches. They wanted to look intimidating, not just to enemies, but to anyone who might be thinking about crossing them. The idea was simple: if you look dangerous, people will treat you like danger. So, pirates might have been criminals, but they were also ahead of the fashion curve. They were basically the rock stars of the 17th century. You know how pirates are always shown with swords? Well, they used them, but when it came to close combat, a cutlass was their weapon of choice. This short, curved sword was designed for slicing through the dense, cramped spaces of a ship during a brawl. Think of it as a pirate's pocket knife. It was quick, it was efficient, and it didn't require much skill, just a willingness to swing wildly. No need for fancy moves, just hack and hope you hit the target. When pirates captured ships, they didn't just take the cargo, they often took the crew as well. Pirates loved kidnapping enemy sailors and selling them as slaves or using them for ransom. But it wasn't all about profit. Some pirates would use prisoners as leverage during negotiations, offering them a chance to live if they handed over their valuables. So while it might seem like pirates were just interested in gold, they were also savvy businessmen who knew how to maximize their profits, even if it meant dealing in human lives. If pirates weren't using fear, they were using clever distractions. One of their favorite tricks? Setting fires on their own ships to draw attention away from their true targets. If they wanted to raid a merchant vessel, they'd start a fire on board to divert the crew's focus. While everyone was scrambling to put out the flames, the pirates would sneak in and take whatever wasn't nailed down. So, next time you see a fire in a pirate movie, don't just think of it as chaos. It's all part of the plan. Pirates weren't the only ones scared of pirates. Governments were terrified too. Pirate havens, like Nassau, were practically lawless zones where pirates would be left alone by local authorities, who were too scared to mess with them. Some pirates even had official protection in the form of commissions from governments. They were given permission to attack enemy ships, essentially turning them into legal pirates. Pirates might have been criminals, but to some countries, they were privateers, basically government-backed pirates with a fancy title and the freedom to loot ships at will. As much as pirates loved their loot, they also had a surprisingly noble side when it came to sharing. Pirates adhered to their own code when it came to dividing treasure. Crew members received their share based on rank, and everyone got an equal piece of the pie. No one would walk away empty-handed. This might sound like basic fairness, but in the lawless world of pirates, it was practically revolutionary. If pirates didn't stick to the code, things could get ugly quickly, and the crew might vote you out faster than you could say, mutiny. Pirates weren't known for their skill in diplomacy, but they were masters of the art of the deal. Some pirates would demand a parley, a truce to discuss terms, before they attacked. This wasn't about diplomacy, though. It was about buying time. Pirates used these moments to scope out a ship, figure out the best approach, and ensure they could grab as much loot as possible. So, when pirates called for a parley, they weren't interested in negotiating. They were setting the stage for a more successful raid. Pirates also had an obsession with mythology. You'd think that with all the real threats they faced, pirates would leave the fantasy stuff behind, but no. Pirates often believed in sea monsters, ghosts, and other supernatural forces. They'd tell stories about the Kraken, a giant squid-like creature that supposedly dragged entire ships under the water. This wasn't just a way to entertain. Pirates genuinely feared these creatures. They might have been ruthless criminals, but they were also superstitious, and the high seas were filled with enough unknowns to make anyone question what lurked beneath the surface. Pirates didn't just raid ships for gold. They were also on the hunt for luxury goods, and tobacco and spices were high on the list. These weren't just valuable for their worth. Pirates knew these goods could be traded at a premium or used to bribe officials back in Europe. It wasn't just the shiny stuff that caught their eye. Practical items like spices became their currency. So while pirates were busy raiding ships, they were also experts at spotting what could turn a quick profit far beyond the treasure chest. But let's not romanticize it. Pirates weren't just playing the fear game. They were experts at adaptation and making do when things went awry. A ship was a pirate's lifeblood, but conditions weren't always perfect. Pirates often had to fix their ships using whatever they could find, scavenging parts, or even raiding other damaged ships. A pirate's life was about resourcefulness, and that often meant making repairs mid-raid, using grappling hooks to board another ship or snag some much-needed supplies. Pirates didn't just steal treasure, they stole opportunity. While pirates were making a living off raiding, they didn't always see it as just about getting gold. They were also survivalists at heart. They knew the importance of fresh food to fend off things like scurvy. So if they came across a ship with fruit or vegetables, they'd take it. No questions asked. Health wasn't just a personal concern, it was a crew concern. After all, a sick crew couldn't fight, and a pirate ship without a healthy crew was a sitting duck. Sometimes, stealing the food mattered more than the gold. Pirates didn't just take from merchant ships, they took the crew as well. Many times, pirates captured sailors and forced them to join their ranks, knowing they needed experienced hands to crew their ships. This was especially common for pirates like Bartholomew Roberts, who would keep his new recruits in line by giving them a choice: join the pirate crew or face death. Pirates knew that adding skilled sailors was just as valuable as taking treasure. It made them stronger and better equipped for future raids. And speaking of punishment, pirates weren't above torturing their enemies to extract information. The notorious method of keel hauling, where a victim was dragged under the ship's hull, was a brutal reminder of what pirates were willing to do. It wasn't just for show. Pirates enjoyed intimidating their enemies, and nothing struck fear into hearts like the idea of being dragged under a ship with barnacles scraping your skin away. This wasn't a crew out for a fair fight. This was a crew out to dominate. But when they were, pirates didn't just steal treasure, they stole the entire ship. Once a pirate crew took over a merchant vessel, they didn't just raid it and leave. They'd often keep the ship and repurpose it for their own needs. This meant pirates could board a larger, faster ship, and within hours, they were ready to plunder again. Talk about upgrading your equipment on the fly. It's like trading in your old car for a Ferrari, except this Ferrari's full of stolen rum. Pirates weren't all about brute force. Some were also manipulative masterminds. Take Captain Kidd, for example. While many pirates relied on terror, Kidd tried to play the respectable pirate. He was actually commissioned by the British government to attack enemy ships. But, as it often goes with pirates, he ended up going rogue. His fine line between pirate and privateer didn't last long. And soon enough, he was hanging from the gallows, a cautionary tale of bad decision-making. Sometimes the good guy can't win at piracy. When pirates weren't pillaging and plundering, they were playing mind games with their victims. Sometimes, pirates would deliberately miss their first shot at a ship, giving the crew the false hope that they might escape. It was the ultimate psychological tactic. You think you're safe, but then bam, the pirates fire again, and suddenly you're handing over your loot. It's like a twisted version of cat and mouse, only the mouse is really screwed from the start. If pirates didn't have swords, they improvised. While cutlasses and pistols were their main tools, pirates were also masters of crafting their weapons when supplies ran low. Some would take metal scraps from a ship and forge makeshift swords or knives. Others would use the tools of the trade, or axes or hammers, as weapons. When you're a pirate, it's not about having the best gear. It's about using whatever you can get your hands on to make sure you survive. Efficiency at its finest. Pirates didn't just fight for treasure, they fought for status. The captain's share was usually much bigger than anyone else's, but even pirate captains had to earn respect from their crew. If they failed, the crew might revolt. Imagine working your way to the top, only to have your own crew throw you overboard for a mistake. Even Blackbeard wasn't immune. Pirate leadership was like a reality TV competition, and your survival depended on how well you kept the crew happy and alive. While pirates were often viewed as ruthless, they were also very efficient about their targets. Pirates weren't about attacking every ship that passed by. No, they chose their targets carefully. Merchant ships were their sweet spot, as these ships usually carried goods that could be sold quickly for a profit. Pirates studied the movements of their prey, waiting for the perfect time to strike. Think of it as the first ever version of shopping smart, except you're stealing from people instead of buying things. Pirates didn't just steal ships, they recycled them. If they captured a ship in decent condition, They'd often renovate it to suit their needs. This could mean stripping down the ship for parts, adding extra weapons, or even painting it to blend in or intimidate. Pirates were basically the original DIY experts, turning a perfectly fine merchant ship into a floating fortress of terror. They didn't just fix things, they improved them for maximum mayhem. You might think pirates were all sword fights and cannon fire, but a good chunk of their time was spent waiting. Pirates didn't just sail from raid to raid. They spent days, sometimes weeks, patrolling and hoping for the right ship to pass by. The best pirates knew how to pick their targets and wait for the perfect opportunity. Patience, as they say, is a virtue, especially when it involves a merchant ship full of treasure that doesn't see you coming. Pirates might have been outlaws, but they were also entrepreneurs. Instead of just hoarding their loot, pirates were savvy enough to use their stolen goods as currency for bribes, deals, and alliances. A pirate captain would often trade goods like tobacco, spices, or even fresh fruit to form alliances with other pirates or local authorities. Pirates didn't just steal for themselves. They understood the value of strategic relationships, as long as it involved a lot of rum and less laws and more looting.
To the merchant ship!
The pirate uniform wasn't just for show, it was functional. Sure, pirates loved to flaunt their fancy boots, coats, and
Prepare
hats,
to board!
but the real reason behind their flamboyance was practicality. Those big hats, they were great for blocking the sun. The fancy coats,
Prepare to
they had
board!
deep pockets to stash weapons and tools for a quick getaway. Pirates didn't just dress to impress, they dressed to survive, and if possible, intimidate anyone who might cross them. Fashion with a side of terror. Pirates didn't always get away with their crimes. They might have been feared, but the law was still out there, and it came with some serious consequences. Many pirates eventually faced trial, often in front of a cheering crowd who wanted to watch them swing from the gallows. Pirate trials weren't exactly fair. The outcome was usually decided long before the accused even stepped into the courtroom. Pirate life expectancy was notoriously short, and the catch-me-if-you-can game didn't have a happy ending for most. When pirates weren't robbing ships or dividing loot, they were usually fighting off rats. Pirates had serious rodent problems. Ships at sea weren't exactly the cleanest places, and rats loved to sneak aboard, eating anything they could get their tiny paws on. Pirates weren't about to let these vermin take over, so they'd often keep cats or other animals on board to control the rodent population. This gave pirates a whole new layer of danger. Fighting off rats was as much a part of the job as fighting off rival ships. Pirates didn't just survive at sea, they thrived on chaos. They loved the unpredictable nature of their work. With no formal system to hold them accountable, pirates created their own brand of chaos management. If a captain was too harsh or made bad decisions, a mutiny was always a threat. But, ironically, pirate crews often stayed united because of the very chaos that could tear them apart. It's like working in an office where your boss is always about to get fired, only with more cannons and fewer emails.
That's all for today. Subscribe to Factopia for more amazing and bizarre facts. Stay curious and keep exploring.